apparently to respond to that key press. That is to say, if you had things layered on top of one another on the UI, whoever responds first is the so-called first responder. If I pass this message called resign first responder to the object called text field, that's going to send it a message saying, there's nothing to see here. Undo whatever you just did. And what did it do? It triggered the keyboard to come up. So now by resigning first responder status, if I recompile and rerun this, I'll actually see that the keyboard should, which is slightly aesthetically more interesting, now goes away. So another example of passing a message, this time involving the notion of first responder status. And suppose next, I feel like this app could be a little better, right? It's underwhelming, admittedly. But if I click thanks, it'd be nice if I could somehow clear the name David that's still now lingering, and I'm going to have to, if I want to play this game again, I have to click in the text view and hit delete, 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 delete. Let's see if we can actually make this a little better. So I somehow want to be able to listen for the user touching that button so as to respond to them subsequently by clearing the name David automatically. So I need to tweak one thing here. I'm going to go into my H file, and I'm going to say, you know what? Rather than just declare a class called viewController that inherits everything from UI viewController, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and promise to implement a UI alert view delegate protocol. So in other words, I've read the documentation on the things called UI alert views, and the documentation told me that, hey, by the way, if you implement this protocol and one or more of its methods, you can then respond to messages that the alert view might send back to you. In other words, I was dismissed. The user clicked thanks. So I have to specify that I'm going to implement that protocol, and then I just need to implement one other thing. Let me go ahead and actually hold Option, and I don't remember what the syntax is, so I'm going to hold Option here. I'm going to click on this thing, and now notice a little pop-up comes up that reminds me what this thing does. Here's the reference, so let me go ahead and click that, and it should open the documentation. And indeed, if I implement this protocol, notice that I could implement now any one or any more of these methods. And among them are, let's see, alert view did dismiss with button index. So that's the one I care about. That is the message that if I implement support for, will be passed to me saying the user clicked thanks. The user dismissed that alert view. So let's go ahead and just see a little more detail. Let me click on that in the documentation. And sure enough, it just confirms that. So it tells me that if I implement this, I have to pass in a pointer to the alert view. I have to pass in, or rather, I will be passed a pointer to the alert view object, and I will be passed an NS integer, 0, 1, 2, 3. If you had a UI alert view that had multiple buttons, like OK and cancel, you'd be told this is 0, this is 1, this is 2, and so forth. This tells me exactly what these are doing in more detail. So let's go ahead and try to implement this. Let me go back to my H file. I've definitely declared that I'm implementing this protocol. Now I'm going to go into my M file, and I'm going to implement only that one method. It's an instance method according to the documentations. It's void. It's called alert view colon, and now I have to pass it, rather I have to declare it in exactly the same way. So let me go ahead and do UI. Let's go ahead and just copy paste. Let's go here. All right, let's go back into here. Paste that in here. UI alert view did dismiss with button index. Put this here. All right, and just as a sanity check, we'll do the whole nslog thing again. So nslog at, nslog at here, save. All right, so let's now do this. Run, stop, run. And here we go. Very exciting. Let's open up the debugging window so we can see the amazing new feature. Go, and then thanks, and I screwed up. All right. What's that? Oh, yes. Perfect. Thank you. So another example that was not meant to be part of the discussion, but it's a good pedagogical trick. So what did I do wrong? So according to Tommy, the key actually is in, RJ. My apologies. So as RJ noticed, we've forgotten to inform this object, the UI alert object, to whom it should send this message once that button has been clicked. And indeed, when I first implemented this very long name method here, or rather called this very long name method, notice that for delegate, I said nil. But in fact, if I am implementing this response inside of myself, using UI alert view did dismiss with button index, I can't just say that there's a nil delegate, because then a message is going to get passed to nil, nothing's going to happen, case in point, per the demo. But if I instead want that message to be passed to me, I simply say self. And recall that self is like this in PHP or Java. So now let me go ahead and recompile, rerun this code. And now hopefully that message should get sent to me. I'll open the debugging window in the background, type my name, type go, all is well, and then thanks. And there, it's actually called this time. So how do I actually now do something that's more interesting? I can do self.textfield.text gets nil, and this will essentially clear the text field. So now if I rerun this application and I type in my name, then type go, and then thanks, notice, watch the name David, it has now disappeared. Very amazing. I'll make this available for download after class. Let's go ahead and take a 5-minute break. When we come back, we'll look at ATM and then Project 2. All right, so we are back, and the teaser for Project 2 is this. For Project 2, you and your partner will be implementing a so-called utility application, which means it's an iOS application with two sides, a main side and then a flip side. And on the main side is where users will be able to play not quite Hangman, but rather Evil Hangman. Those of you unfamiliar with Hangman, it's a game where the computer picks a word from a dictionary, and then you have some number of guesses, letter by letter, to figure out what the computer is thinking of. It's an incredibly mind-numbing game once you are our age, or your age, sadly my age. But Evil Hangman is much more exciting. And in fact, it's a great game to play with your roommates or have them play it, because in Evil Hangman, the computer cheats. Rather than committing to a pseudo-randomly chosen word at the beginning of the game, it instead chooses a length for a word, and then that's it. And then it looks at its dictionary of all possible words, thousands of words, and the user proceeds to guess a letter, like the letter E. What does the computer then do? It then scours its dictionary, eliminates all words that actually have the letter E in them, and says, nope, there are no E's in this word. So then you get a strike against you, and you have a finite number of strikes. And so then you, the human, get to play again, and you choose like an A. And the computer looks through its list of non-E words, further eliminates any words that, that don't have E's, and eliminates words that have A's, so as to shrink the list of all possible words even smaller, so that it can then say to you, nope, no A's in this word either. Now, mind you, the computer still doesn't know what that word is going to be. It's constantly trying to evade your guesses, and at some point, after some number of guesses, the computer's probably going to have to make a commitment, because you're going to say the letter N, and just by chance, all the words that it has left in its data bank have the letter N in them. So it has to choose which of those words, or rather, what location of N to reveal. So it looks through its list of words, that have, all of which unfortunately have N, but N might be here, or here, or here. So the computer has to decide, fine, N will be here, and then further whittles its list of words down to only those words that have N in that location, but no A's and no E's. Now, meanwhile, the clock is ticking, and you're guessing wrong, guessing wrong, guessing wrong. So odds are you, the human, are going to lose. And indeed, when you actually see this game played and watch your roommates' reactions, the word almost always ends up being something ridiculously obvious, like puppy. It's just such that you never actually guessed any letters that were in such an obvious word like puppy. And that's simply because the computer is evading, evading, evading. So it's a great way of making your roommates feel really stupid when playing your CS164 project. So that's the game you're going to implement. We'll talk a bit more technically about how you'll go about wiring that up, but realize that there'll be a walkthrough for the project spec this Wednesday. So do realize that even though project 1 is due this Friday, the proposal for 2, and recall that the proposal means read the spec, do just the Bitbucket stuff, and decide between you and your partner who's going to do what for this project, because the design document and style guide will be due next week. All right, so let's turn our attention then back to Xcode and take some steps toward doing something like that. So recall that we left off last time with this ATM, which I didn't want to do before that more fun app just now, because there's a lot more going on. But it's a lot of copy-paste, really, recall, because we have a lot of buttons, all of which do effectively the same thing. Send a message to the view controller indicating what button was pressed. But let's see if we can't tease this apart now, because realize, especially with Objective-C, which is new to most people, your partner is going to be writing some code, you're going to be writing some code, and he or she is also going to be doing stuff with nib files, potentially. So being able to understand what someone else has done, whether it's me me or Tommy, the TFs, or your partner is actually quite important. So do keep in mind the various tricks and the clicking and the right-clicking that will reveal to you exactly what is going on in an iOS application. So recall that this is where we left off 2 weeks ago with the ATM. And recall that this example introduced a little more than just a view controller and the app delegate. I manually created two files called account.h and account.m because much like our discussions weeks ago of MVC, I wanted an M in this application, a model that represented a user's account balance. Now, I could just have a global variable or some kind of instance variable inside of my view controller, but that didn't feel quite right, and it shouldn't feel right to you. The view controller should be about talking to model, talking to view, but not necessarily storing a whole lot of state itself.